What's up, galera? Because you've been asking me, I'm going to make a video only in English. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the history of Brazil for gringos. So you can send this video to your gringo friends who think that you live in Buenos Aires or the Amazon, which you don't, unless you live in Manaus or Belém or Buenos Aires. Brazil was founded by the Portuguese, and that is why they speak Portuguese and not Spanish. Portuguese were excellent navigators, but they weren't very good at naming things, or at least not very creative. The name Brazil comes from the first thing they found there that was worth money, which was a tree called the Brazil tree. They used it to make dyes back in Europe, so they called the country Brazil. The first place they landed, Porto Seguro, means safe port because it was the only port that was safe enough to land. Then they founded Rio de Janeiro because they founded a river in January, meaning the river of January. Turns out it wasn't a river, it was a bay, but whatever. They have a place where they found gold, Minas Gerais, they called it General Mines. And a place with a big reef, they called Recife, which means reef. When I say the Portuguese founded Brazil, it's not exactly accurate because there was already a lot of indigenous people living there. The Guarani Tupi, I don't know how to say it exactly. So the first big cash crop was sugar. Then there was a gold rush in Minas Gerais, like I mentioned. And finally, they landed on coffee, which was really when they started making some money. It was never really administered super strictly by Portugal. They sent over these captains. They split it up into, I think, 15 captaincies. Kind of very laissez-faire. Well, we won't look, do what you do, just pay your taxes to us or give us some money. I don't know exactly how it works. But in this time, the first capital was in Salvador de Bahia. But as the kind of economic center shifted from the sugar in the northeast to the coffee in the southeast, they moved the capital to Rio de Janeiro. I know if now you say the capital is Rio de Janeiro, you'd be wrong because now it's Brasilia, but we'll get to that. Relax. Brazil was doing its thing, but there was a big mess going on in Europe. And the problem was Napoleon. He was fighting with everybody, and he fought with the Spanish, and eventually he decided to fight with the Portuguese. And the Portuguese were good navigators, but they didn't have the army like the French. Prince and king and Holy Family said, "Partiu! We're out of here." They went to Brazil to kind of flee. Napoleon thing ended. Yeah, okay, maybe you guys should come back and govern the country, Portugal. But the son, Dom Pedro, he said, "Nah, yo, I'm staying. Eu fico, I'm staying." He's like, "Dad, you can go back." Probably he had like a Brazilian girlfriend or he just liked the weather. It's really nice down here. I can understand why he said eu fico. Brazil becomes independent, but it's still a kingdom or an empire, and Dom Pedro's the king or the emperor. I don't know exactly know. I'm not a historian. I'm just trying to teach you some English, okay? So that goes on for a while, but then it gets messy, I guess Dom Pedro's good, but he's a little out of touch, so he lets his son rule, whose son's only like 5, but I guess the regents are taking care of everything. So there's a lot of internal fighting. There's also a war going on with Paraguay. I think Paraguay got kind of aggressive and started a war, and a lot of people went to war. It was very bad, very bad. Paraguay did not fare well in that war. Oh, and eventually slavery was abolished later than the United States, but the difference, they didn't have to fight a civil war to abolish it, so in that case, it's maybe better, But anyway, slavery's not good. The story starts getting interesting again in 1930s when Getulio Vargas comes to power. He starts a little revolt, comes to power. I think he's from Rio Grande do Sul, which is the south, and Sao Paulo and Minas Gerais had this deal where like they'd alternate presidents, because Minas Gerais had the milk, Sao Paulo had the coffee, café con leche, but Sao Paulo went back on the deal. Anyway, I don't really know all the details, but like he came to power and now he was like running stuff, and he was kind of like our Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Eventually he's deposed by the military, but somehow comes back to power and then tries to depose him again, and he is so depressed that he shoots himself in the heart. If I was gonna shoot myself, I'd go for the head. The heart, doesn't. I'm not gonna shoot myself, but just saying. Anyway, he said something poetic. I don't remember. I'm American. The next president is Kubacheck. He promised 50 years of progress in 5. He did a lot of good things. He moved the capital to Brasilia. Remember I told you that Brasilia would come up. It's the capital. Remember that, Gringos, write it down. Brasilia is the capital. Industrialized the country, but he also got them to a lot of debt. Usually when you kind of try to grow too fast and you borrow, doesn't really work out. After him, there's a president called John Goulart. I think they called him Django. He had some leftist leanings, so even if he wasn't leftist, so he got deposed by a coup. A lot of people blame the United States CIA. Who knows? You know, it's water under the bridge. There was this military dictatorship for maybe 25 years, all the way up until 1985, I think. And they censored a lot of things, but you also see a lot of good music coming out of that time, kind of music that subverts the dictatorship. Chico Buarque, Caetano Veloso, Gilberto Gil, some names that come to mind. Look it up, look it up. In 1985, power transitioned peacefully. One of the things you notice about Brazil, a lot of things transferred peacefully. In the United States, there was a lot of war. I think there was this guy Cardozo who was like, not like your typical Brazilian. He was kind of like laid back. He didn't like football, but he fixed the inflation. He changed the currency to the real. The inflation was like so much, like if you wanted to buy a bag of beans, you had to bring like a bag full of money. There's a song about that, Betty Carvalho. And the next guy, you probably know, Lula. He was the first president to come from the working class. You know, he was very popular though, because he did a lot of things for the poor, in theory at least. And after him was his successor, Dilma, who got impeached because of, I don't even know, like some kind of scandal with the oil companies, Petrobras. And now the president is a guy named Temer, and like everyone says, fora Temer, get out Temer. I don't really get too involved in politics because, you know, no es minha praia, sabe? But now you know some things about Brazil, gringos. There's much more to know, but that's the political history. Now, watch more of my videos for the culture. And don't forget to subscribe. Por favor, se inscreva. Te amo. Tchau. Beijos. Peace!